Before I say a whole lot, I want to offer a brief disclaimer. When I was a kid, my brother and I used to fight like cats and dogs. In our living room, in the front yard. He used to pull the heads off my Barbie dolls. He used to call me bird feeder. That was his nickname for me. I mean, I may have burned his G.I. Joes a few times. I may have tripped him up and then acted like he did something to me to get him in trouble. We had our moments, is what I'm saying. But the second we left our house, we were a unit. When we were out in the world, we looked out for each other. And could nobody say a thing to us about each other or about our family? Because in the end, we knew that it was our job to protect each other. And even though we loved each other, that gave us a right to get on each other's case, but it sure didn't leave a whole lot of room for other people to get on our case from outside. Do you know what I'm saying? I share that with you because I kind of want you to view what I have to say today in the light of that analogy. I want you to know that this community is my home and that I love it. And that when I'm outside of it, can't nobody say a thing about it. But I'm not outside of it today. I am here with you, my brothers and sisters. And I have some things to say. Got it? Got it. Got it. So for a very long time, I worked for the United Way. And in that role, it was my responsibility to be exclusively focused on the needs of the community that I served. Often that meant a region. Very often that meant a specific neighborhood. Now, I do different work. Now, I work a global mission. It's called Spring Impact. And our job is to help nonprofits and NGOs around the world take a good idea and expand it so that it can reach more people in more places. That's different than looking out for a corner of the world. It's thinking big and thinking about how to change the world. And I'm blessed to do that work. But I wanted to tell you that I've learned something quickly in this role. Something that really supports what I had already assumed in my life with United Way. And it's very simple. I've learned that wherever change happens, it started with a small group of people who have a burning desire to see things get a little bit better for the people and the communities that they are motivated to protect. It just doesn't matter where our boundaries are because they're arbitrary. What's always true is the way human beings mobilize to make change happen. And it starts off so ordinary. And it becomes so extraordinary because it starts off with the gift of an idea. For example, right now in our community, right here, there is a small group of people who are beginning to mobilize around the idea that they may be in danger of losing ground that they have had for so long. Right here in our community. And this is good, and this is healthy. Because whatever happens next, our neighbors will have done what they needed to do to protect their own. Right now, in a community in India, there is a group of people who have mobilized to reclaim land that was taken from them by their government so that they can cultivate that land and farm to take care of their families. And this is good. This is healthy. Because whatever happens, that community will have gotten together to fight for what they believed they needed to protect. No matter where we are or what we are facing, change always happens when the magic of mobilization is harnessed and conjured up by a group of ordinary people. So I'm here today because my friend Estelle asked me to come and speak to you about the urgency of mobilization. And some of you who know me and have heard me speak before are going to expect me to be moderately diplomatic, and somewhat inspiring. But I need to tell you right now, I don't feel like it. I don't feel like it. I don't want to. I don't think that we are in a time or a place in this country right now where moderate anything makes any sense. I don't feel like we are in a moment in our history where finding the half measure makes any sense. I don't care to be comforting. I care to energize. I care to make people want to do something. And so, that's my goal for today. And if anything I say today inspires you, I want you to know that it is your responsibility to own that inspiration and do something with it. It should not be a fleeting emotion. It should be a fire that burns in you to do something. Because that is where we are. And it is our responsibility to take action. Where is this coming from? Well, almost exactly 2 years ago, the island that my family comes from was entirely decimated by a hurricane. My island, and every Puerto Rican you will ever meet will claim the island like it's theirs and they crafted it with their own hands. I am no different. But I was blessed to go. I was blessed to go to the island in the name of United Way, in the name of Roanoke, really, with the supplies that this beautiful community helped me to generate. And I went, and I saw, and I experienced. And the things that I will never forget will be the observations I made when in the neighborhoods that my parents grew up in, when I walked through and realized that they weren't there anymore. The place that my mom and dad grew up are not places I can take my children to now because they're not there anymore. It was gone. The roofs were missing, the houses were in shards. Everything they knew about safety and security, gone. But I want to tell you that there's one thing that went missing during that time that will never come back, and it is the most important thing of all. It was the belief that they were part of a pact with America, one that meant that they were protected from harm. They believed that it was someone's job somewhere to come to their aid in their time of need. And they understood that they were wrong in that moment. They learned, didn't they? We all learned. 2 years later, that sense that someone's coming to save us is still gone. And it needs to be gone. And that's my island. That's my example. You don't even have to go much further than where you're sitting right now to have a great example of what I'm talking about. Right around this beautiful hotel 50 years ago was a thriving African-American center of commerce. This was a place where people came to set up shop and set up dignity and inspire self-belief and claim and own the prosperity of their own community. But others decided that actually what it was a blighted neighborhood. And in fact, everyone in the city might be better off if we took advantage of an opportunity for economic development and made some changes that required those in this area to give up what they had and what they worked for. And yes, they were made promises, and those promises were dismantled by bulldozers and explanations that amounted to one simple truth. Lots of words, but they amounted to one simple truth, which was what they had and what they had worked for was not worth as much as the bottom line. They were told that the trauma of being ripped apart from everything that they knew and ripped away from the people that they had built relationships with and loved and known as the foundation of their lives and community was a small price to pay for the comfort and prosperity of people only a few streets over. Now, this is true. But the fact that it's true and that it's been a while is not an excuse. It still matters. And so here's the question. What happens to a community, to a neighborhood, when you inflict the primal wound of stealing that neighborhood or that community's assets from them? You steal their capacity to thrive also. And this is evidenced now. You can see this now in this community and in communities across this nation that experienced urban renewal. You can see it when you recognize that in this area, the lifespan is 20% shorter than the lifespan of a person living 7 miles away. You can see it when you know that you may graduate from high school if you live in this general neighborhood, but your chances of going to college, slim. Your chances of graduating from college, slimmer. And your colleagues that graduated in high school in that community 7 miles away, 75% shot. Why? Well, how are you going to live a long life if you don't have access to good and adequate health care? How are you going to live a long life if you don't have access to a grocery store where you can go and spend your hard-earned money and buy the food you want and need to cook, to serve in your house, in your neighborhood, to the people you love? How are you going to live the healthiest life possible when you don't have access to those basic human rights? This is the aftermath of what happens when we inflict these primal wounds. And why am I stressing them? Because we have to remember, recognize, embrace, and own this one simple truth. No one is coming to save us. I want to talk about the bill of goods that we buy when we choose to believe that someone else out there is looking out for our interests. And by us, I mean those of us who come from or represent neighborhoods and communities that others would just as soon forget existed. Or who simply don't know how to value what we have to say in alignment with what they believe we need. That's the us I'm talking about, and it means every single one of you in this room. Not one person here was part of the tragedies of the past. But you will be a part of the tragedies of the future if you don't recognize your individual responsibility to be one of the ordinary people that does something extraordinary in the name of mobilization. That is your lot in life. And it can be a beauty, or it could be something you regret later. Am I lecturing you a little bit? I think that's all right with me. I want you to think about the stories that we've been told. And there are stories, and we don't necessarily always view them as stories, but they are stories. They're the stories that we have heard so many times that we actually find ourselves thinking of them as truth. We start to believe them. They start to frame and shape the way we view not only our communities, but ourselves. For me, and I know them well because I have had the wonderful opportunity and obligation in my professional responsibilities to hear those stories and to find a way to challenge them. Remember I talked about how I had to be a diplomat? I don't have to anymore. I'm going to London. But these things mean something. And the stories mean the most. These are stories that are designed to keep us where we are and to lull us into some version of a sleep that is an oppressive form of non-existence. So how about this story? How about the good enough is good enough story? Do you know what I mean by this? The half measures that don't actually solve problems, but they sound really good. Do you know what I'm talking about? Can you think of a few of these? I can. How about the community gardens instead of the community grocery stores? Right? How about the health fairs instead of the health clinics? Right? It's a form of bigotry. It's a version of placation that's intended to keep you happy with what you've been given instead of fighting for what you deserve. Am I wrong? But it feels good in the moment. It sounds good in the media. But is it a solution? No. And whose job is it to fight for the solution? These are Band-Aids that are put on gaping wounds and sold to us like a cure. But we can tell the difference. You know it's true. What about the story that this is just the way it is? Right? Hey, this is just the way it is. What happened, happened, and now these are the cards you've been dealt. And in fact, what are you going to do about it? It is your problem. What's wrong with you, neighborhood, community person? Why don't you lift yourself up by your bootstraps and fix it? And in fact, this is just the way it is because in order for communities or neighborhoods to grow or thrive, businesses have to thrive too. And sometimes the way they thrive is by bulldozing right through your neighborhood to get to promise, right? To get to prosperity. That's a story we've been told. But whose neighborhood are they bulldozing through? How about the idea, the story, that we're doing this for the greater good? Right? But why is it that the greater good typically involves the affluent above those who struggle? And how about my favorite story? Well, if you don't want our help, then you're on your own. You're on your own. Figure it out. That is an abdication of responsibility. And not only is it an abdication of responsibility, it's the blame game. And it is an extraordinary way of creating the us and them that is dividing this country now more than ever. Or at least more so than any other moment in my lifetime. It's a version of intimidation when we are told in our neighborhoods, in our communities, that it's up to us to solve our problems, particularly when we didn't create them. Do these make sense to you? Yes. Have you heard these stories before? Yes. Did you view them as the lies we're told, or did you understand them to be the truth that we must grapple with? I want to encourage you to understand them for what they are, because they are not fixed. And we have every right and responsibility to advocate for that which we know we deserve. So what do we do? I have sufficiently depressed everybody in this room. Now let's talk about what we do, right? I want to start by saying the first thing is to recognize the extraordinary efforts of those who have gone before us and faced the kinds of battles and challenges that most of us have not even conceived of or imagined yet. I am talking about my friend Estelle, and I'm talking about many others. And I want us to hear in our voices, in our heads, their voices when they tell us, when they, you know who they are, when they tell us who they are, we can listen. But it's when they show us who they are that we act. And act may mean get alongside, work with rather than against. And act may mean work against because our job is to protect what's ours. Those who have gone before us have done the job. And it's now time for us to pick up the baton that they have to lay down at our feet. You want to know what to do? Stop thinking, start doing. Second, I said it before, and I'm going to say it again. It is important for you to do what you need to do. Meditate, talk to your friends, have a glass of wine. I don't know what it is. Do what you need to do to understand and accept that no one is coming to save us. Help is not on the way, my friends. We are the saviors that we are waiting for. They're not going to come to fix what they broke. It's not going to happen. Because nobody can appreciate the beauty and the majesty and the value of what's our own more than we do. How could they? How could we expect for others to align their interests to ours when they don't share our values? Now, we may be able to get people there with us, but that only happens when we operate as a unit. And when we recognize that we have to, in solidarity, stand for the thing that we must protect. There are pipelines being considered in the state of Virginia. There are bulldozers firing up right now. There is somebody somewhere thinking that the corner shop that you love to visit to get your bodega, where you like to go to get your morning coffee, that would be a really great place to set up their next business location. There are people out there that look at what we have and value as their next acquisition. Who's going to save you from them? You. That's who. Because the alternative is an unabashed repeat of our history. From colonization to segregation to redlining, it is all possible again, and you know that it's true. I told you I wasn't here to inspire you, didn't I? It's no time for it. It's all possible again, but it is unlikely, isn't it? Why is it unlikely? Because, as the old saying goes, you fool me once, shame on you. You fool me twice, what? Shame on me. Our eyes aren't closed. Those stories didn't put us to sleep, or at least we've been woken up, haven't we? It's unlikely to happen again, but only if we take action to protect what we care for. We are the saviors we've been waiting for. And I don't know if ever there was a time to be complacent in America. I don't know if there was. But I promise you this is not that time. Anybody feeling complacent these days? No. I don't know anybody who is. But I do know people who don't know what to do. I want to encourage you to do. And here's what I want you to encourage you to do. I want you to protect the basic assets that every neighborhood and every community deserves, no matter where that community is in the world. There are basic assets that we should all have access to, and that we are endowed the unalienable right to, right? We deserve, all of us, to have access to the resources that nurture our health and protect our safety. And we should not have to make sacrifices to get them. Do you hear me? All of us deserve that. We deserve to know that should hard times befall us, that our extended community will come to our aid and seek no benefit from it, but instead come to our aid because we deserve it and because we would do it for them. And we deserve to be able to educate our children so that they may live the kind of life that facilitates their best talents rather than limits their potential. Everybody in this community and in every community that I will work in, and every community that you will ever encounter, everybody deserves these three assets. And so when you see that they are going missing in your neighborhood, or that they are being subjugated and overwhelmed and hidden or lost, these are the things you must fight for in whatever way you can, in whatever way makes sense for you. And you must do so alongside others who believe and share the values that you do. Because ultimately, what we're fighting against is not and never will be more powerful than the will and alchemy of ordinary people working together to protect what they value. It is just not more, it's just not, there's no more strength there than what we have. Every moment in history that has changed our direction started with a group of ordinary people doing something magical in cohort with one another. Every single monumental shift in this nation and every other nation started with somebody organizing. From Nelson to Martin Luther to Estelle and to the many others. You can be right in those ranks with them, but you have to decide it's your responsibility. Because it's time for us to craft our own stories. We've got our own stories to tell. And because no one's coming to save us. It's our job. Thank you.
Put it on the hill, Gary.